Hey there, it's Miss Gretta here with the Literacy Lab, and I'm here to read you the last and final chapter of True Blue, written by Joan Elste, illustrated by Diane De Silva Ryan, and published by Grosset and Dunlap. So last time we left off on chapter 6, we're about to read chapter 7, and we had a lot to process in that chapter, didn't we? Because Blue came back and kept making JD follow him, right? Yeah, but when JD finally got to Blue, we found Molasses too, who was gravely injured. And because Molasses was so injured, JD really tried to carry Molasses all the way back. And so we ended the chapter with JD holding Molasses with Blue right next to her side. That's loyalty. You see where Blue is very loyal to JD and Molasses? But my question is, do you think the reason Blue was able to find Molasses was because he has a really good sniffer, like we talked about in chapter 1? I want you to think about that, okay? I also want to just touch on, the last chapter was very sad, but let's keep reading to see what happens with the dogs, okay? Before we begin, I would like us to go over some vocab words that are in this chapter, and then we can discuss the entire book. That's the fun part of chapter books, is you can discuss each chapter individually, and then you can touch on the entire story, okay? So first vocab words in chapter 7 is bolt upright. This is to sit or stand quickly and very straight because of a noise or surprised motion. Has something ever surprised you and you just sort of sit up or stand up immediately because it scared you almost? Yeah, that's considered bolt upright. And the next word is praising. This is to express happy and excited approval of an act. And whenever you give praising, like JD, she'll give praising to Blue when Blue listens to her. So that's we'll go over that too. But praising is giving a happy expression because somebody did something that you approved of. Okay, so let's get into reading chapter 7 and see what happens with the dogs. Chapter 7. I wished with all my heart for a miracle, and then for no reason at all, Blue sat bolt upright. The hair on his back stood up and he growled. I was scared. What if poachers were coming? What if they shot me, thinking I was a deer or something? I bet they shot Molasses thinking he was a coon. I sat very still and held my breath. Blue tore past me into the woods. Then I heard the sound of my name floating on the night air like music. JD! Dad cried when he reached us. Blue was leaping and jumping all over him. Your mom and I were worried sick. JD knew her dad and mom would be worried about her, didn't she? Yeah, but that's good that her dad knew something wasn't right and he came looking for them. Then he saw Molasses and gathered him up gently in his arms. Oh my goodness, he said, looks like you both need some tending to. In 10 minutes we were home. We laid Molasses on the floor in front of the wood stove. Dad called the vet, but he was away on a fishing trip. So Mom warmed a pot of water to clean the wound while Dad called Walter. That's great Dad showed up in time. Let's see what happens. Walter came and they both worked hard over poor Molasses. At last they got the bullet out. He's one tough old hound dog, Walter said to Dad. A bullet in his leg isn't going to keep him down. I could see tears in his eyes. Lucky JD found him. Blue found him, I said sleepily. He knew Molasses was in trouble, so he went looking for him. But he was clear across the swamp and deep in the woods on the far end of my land, Walter said. Blue's never been over there. Blue hasn't been on Walter's land and yet still went clear over there. Let's see why. Blue can sniff out anything. You've seen him. It still amazes me, Walter answered. He scratched the top of his head. and he kept Molasses warm all night. I told them both. He was lying almost on top of him. I saw it. We could see Walter was still pretty upset. Dad threw his arms around Walter. "Why, I'd do as much for you, Walt," he teased. Walter laughed. Then he wiped his eyes with his sleeves. "I've had that old hound longer than I care to remember," he said. "I don't know what I'd do without him." "He'll be fine," Dad told him. "The vet will be home tomorrow. Take Molasses over just to check. I think we did a good job. Lucky we got him here when we did." "Thanks, J.D.," Walter said. He picked up Molasses and tenderly wrapped him in a blanket. "And thank you too, Blue." Blue slapped his tail for a few tired times. He knew Walter was praising him. Walter was giving him an excellent thumbs up for doing the great job. By the time Walter left, Blue was sound asleep at the foot of my bed. I watched him whimpering and kicking in his sleep. I pulled back the covers and slid into bed. I was sure Blue was chasing a mole to its hole, a coon to its hollow, or a possum up a tree. The end. Okay, so let's kind of reflect on that chapter and then we'll go over the whole book. So chapter 7, luckily Dad showed up in time. JD carried Molasses pretty far, didn't she? And because she carried him so far, and Dad was able to find JD and Blue pretty quickly and carry Molasses the rest of the way. And then they were able to make sure Molasses got better. They were able to fix him up with the hot water and probably stitch him up a little so that way his wounds could be cleaned and healing. So Molasses is okay now, which is great. But the only reason he was okay was because Blue was so loyal to him and he could sniff him out when something was wrong. So he went clear over to Walter's land to find Molasses and stayed with him. Although he disobeyed JD in what he usually does, he stayed with his dog friend to make sure he'd be okay, and because he did that, Molasses was able to live and can still keep being his old slow self, right? Yeah. So I really hope you enjoyed this book like I did, and I hope you learned the value of loyalty. Not just in dogs, but in people too. So, I know that there were a lot of emotions in this book, and that's okay, because that means we connected with the characters. And that's great. And I know there were a lot of vocab words in this book too, but always keep in mind, you can always go back and get these words. I hope you really enjoyed this book like I did, and I look forward to reading another story with you in the future. All right, I'll see you later. Bye!